Hello, Stephen.
Hello, Gil.
Um, Great to meet you in a kind of a family gathering.
Yes,
Can you tell us your name and profession?
yes. I'm Stephen Russek. I'm trained as a chemical engineer. I'm recently retired as the chief engineering scientist of Astronautics Corporation of America, based in the U.S. in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So you're in the retirement now,
Yes,
and you're here in Israel as part of a group.
yes. I'm here in Israel with Yeshiva University, with the Fish Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies, and we're coming to visit centers of excellence in Israel related to the Holocaust with a specific objective of trying to understand how they're going to adapt and change and think about the impact of the events of October 7th and what followed on the way they approach education and remembrance of the Shoah and October 7th.
And did you get any insights already from what you've seen so far?
Yes, so I had the program has not yet begun, but my intersection with the events of October 7th have already begun. I've spent time with uh, with a very close family, or they're actually close friends. But as a very dear friend of mine said, that when you come to Israel and people ask you, "Are you going to visit family? Are you going to visit friends?" and the answer is really, "We're all mishpacha. We're all family."
Yes, yes.
Yes, and so yeah, I've had a lot of interesting discussions. It's a very painful subject for everybody. There's a distinct feeling of abandonment, and then the resilience of how to recover and to face the issues around the war. And I think the one of the most emotional moments recently was I went to Anu, the Museum of the Jewish People,
What
and
was called Betat Futsot before.
yes, correct. And I think the last exhibit I went to, which I went to with Shirley, Gil's wife. She was a lovely host, and the last exhibit we went to was an art exhibit and included photography associated with the events that took place in the Gaza envelope, and it was very emotionally difficult. It's a very challenging thing to come to grips with. I'm the child of of Holocaust survivors, and so the trauma of the Holocaust looms large in my life. I lost nearly all of our family in Europe in that Holocaust, and to see an event that took place here with such horrible atrocities against the Jewish people is just it's incomprehensible to wrap your head around, and it's the one of the founding beliefs of the state of Israel is that this would be a secure home for the Jewish people, and the events of that day just in many ways shattered that. And the Israeli people have not yet had a chance to fully come to grips with that. And I'm here basically to bear witness and provide solidarity for my Jewish family here.
And how do you explain that the reactions the day after, 8th of October, was immediately against Jewish people? How would you explain if you talk about searching about Holocaust and your own family experience, and then coming here and see that in the world, and including the States, uh, people either are blind or don't want to hear or see, or how could it's very from here from Israel, we don't understand it.
Well, it's in some ways it's inexplicable. In other ways, it's consistent with 2,000 years of Jewish history. Unfortunately, um,
Antisemitism.
anti-Semitism has been present in Jews have had to respond to anti-Semitism ever since we went into exile when we lost our sovereignty of our own nation.
2,000 years ago.
Yes, and so it's been quite a challenge. how to explain what I see. It's easier to talk about what I see in the U.S. because I'm an American.
Yes.
I would say my heart is partly Israeli. I've made a great effort through my lifetime to understand Israel, to study Israel, to make friends in Israel, and to stay in touch with my family and friends. In the U.S., I think that certainly amongst the Jewish community in the U.S., the vast majority tends to be on the left side of the political spectrum of various flavors, and I think when they think of anti-Semitism in the U.S., they tend to look at the white supremacists and they look at the right side of the political spectrum. And because of my family history and understanding the history of the 20th century, I'm fully aware of what the history of the political process on the left and the right has been. And much of American Jews, really, their understanding of the 20th century is very focused on what the Nazis did, and not so much on what happened in the Soviet Union before the Shoah and after the Shoah, and even through the whole process, the whole period in the 60s when the Soviet Union went to war on the Jews. And what I know is that I've come to understand is that many of my dearest friends, who I love dearly, sometimes they're blind in their left eye and they don't understand that anti-Semitism is present on the left. What I will say is that on the whole, what the media captured is always the extremes. It's what makes news. So what I can say is that the vast majority of Americans still stand with Israel. Yes. And it gives me great joy in that. Yeah. But there is a change that's happening, and it's very sad to see young people and even some young Jews who don't really, I think some of them don't understand what's going on, or they're well-meaning and they worry about the plight of the Palestinian people. And I would love nothing more than to have Palestinians live in peace side by side with Jews in this land, in this region.
Do you believe it might happen someday?
What I say is I hope that it will. What I have been unable to see since the end of the Second Intifada, I just don't see a path. I don't see a street that is continuous. That, let's say, it's a highway that is missing bridges, and I don't know how those bridges were built, but I just want to believe that there can be a difference. And there are examples of societies that have reformed themselves. I think,
but it's not the majority.
No, it's not. It's not the majority. But I will say, for example, the German people have come to terms with what they did to us, and if you think and you look towards Europe and you say, who is Israel's greatest ally in Europe? It's Germany, unequivocally.
Yeah, they regret.
There's this genuine regret. I did a lot of business in Germany over the years, and I met many Germans, and I've had some personal conversations with some.
But still, the anti-Semitism is there.
Yes,
is there in Europe,
absolutely,
and in the US.
Yes,
I think even more than Arab countries. I don't think Arab countries are anti-Semitism. First, they are Semites. Mm. Secondly, it came not from there, but I think what happened that the anti-Semitism in Europe and the US, plus the bad blood we have here with our neighbors, that they don't want us here. Mm-hmm. They can make peace with us only if we are not here. Mm-hmm. So it magnifies, and I think it sparks and ignites the anti-Semitism vapors that are there for 2,000 years. You didn't have to have more than one day to Europe and US to be all over us against.
I think there's a great deal of truth to that, but I think there's also the very nature of the history of this region, where following the Islamic conquest of this area, starting in the 7th century, The Jews were second-class citizens in these societies. There are times when we flourished, as the Jewish people flourished in those societies, but we were never fully integrated. We were always outside of those societies.
We were under other regime. We didn't have our own regime.
Yeah, that's correct. We lost our sovereignty, and so we were dependent upon the being in a welcoming location and a region, and it didn't always happen. So we were persecuted, and the fact of the matter is that after the state of Israel was born,
surprise, we have a regime and we can fight. What happened to these miserable Jews? They became brave people.
Yes,
they are violent. They protect themselves. Yes. The world cannot perceive it.
Yeah, it's these are all the contradictions that emerged from the 20th century. It's when you look back on the 20th century, it's a horror, and also it's a century of the worst of mankind and the century of the best of mankind
at the same time.
At the same time, Gil, you and I have been talking a lot about science and technology in our discussions before coming to this podcast, and there was a complete revolution in physics, which has rolled over into a revolution in all the other sciences and engineering. Today, at the beginning of the 20th century, Einstein thought that what we now call entanglement was crazy. It was impossible. It just couldn't possibly happen.
He insisted.
Yes. And today what we see is that technologies are emerging for secure communication using quantum entanglement. It's crazy.
And as we spoke, there is a kind of an odd thing. What is the percentage of Jewish people in the world's population, and the percentage of those people that are involved in these things of physics that change from Newton to the Einstein's theory, and then what is the percentage?
It's huge. It's double digits of percentages. I don't know exactly what they are, and we're 0.2% of the population of the world.
How do you explain that?
I think one way I have come to explain it, and maybe I don't have this right, but this is just my impression from reading the history of science, which I've really had a great passion around, is that Jews our society had a great tradition of learning and asking really hard questions of ourselves about our tradition. And it goes to the very question of, for example, why did we end up in exile? We didn't. In Jewish tradition, we actually don't blame the Romans for having thrown us out.
We were falling apart.
We were falling apart. We were fighting each other. Sinat Chinam, baseless hatred. And what was our response to that? Our response was to increase our intensity of learning. It was to go back to our tradition and question everything and find out how to live in the world. And we continued to go through that. And then after the European Enlightenment happened in the Christian world, the Jews were looking around them, and Jews have always integrated information from all of the cultures that were around them, and a kind of enlightenment happened on our own terms. It's called the Haskalah, and as a result of this, so many avenues of taking our traditional learning opened. And you see that in so many of the great scientists of the first couple of decades, 3, 4, 5, 6 decades of the 20th century. And these people made great contributions to physics and medicine and chemistry.
All came from learning how to learn.
How to learn.
Hundreds of years of being expert in learning.
Yes.
And when they got from Torah, continued the Torah, but also opened their world to the science and engineering, you got them together.
Yes.
That's the explanation, probably. But why do most of the world hate us?
I don't know. I really don't have an answer for that. I don't know. I think in each situation, we always find ourselves being the other, and in that process, when societies become under stress, it seems that whatever is found to be the most loathsome quality of the people in that society, the thing that they believe that they dislike the most, for some reason they attribute it to us. Under early Christianity, we were the Christ killers, and in contemporary society, Israel is labeled the colonialist, the apartheid nation. And then when you come here, I come here and I look at, I'm wandering, I'm going in and out of restaurants. I've come here many times, and I'm always amazed that I go in to a place to eat shawarma. I was in a little town near Caesarea last night, and late at night, it was almost midnight, to sit down and have some shawarma,
which is an Arabic food.
And the place sells kosher food. The people behind the counter are Jews, likely from Morocco or Yemen, and the people waiting online, some of them are religious Jews and some of them are Arabs. And then there's a family just out the door of Bedouin Jews, and they're all enjoying it. It's late at night, and their family are all there. And I'm saying, this is a scene that no one in America understands. And we show that it can happen. And at the same time, I did witness some confrontations by some people, where there was at a truck stop, along the road on off 6, and a young Jewish boy who his dress looked like he was what in the U.S. they would call hilltop youth. He was sort of ultra religious, national religious, but a very strong extremist. And he's getting impatient. He got into an argument with the Arab behind the counter, and the truth of the matter, he was being disrespectful to that person, and it's troubling. Every culture, Israel is a democracy. All democracies are imperfect.
Yes.
But the shouts that I hear on the streets of America, at the universities of America, this is not the reality that I witness when I come here.
In the University of America, as we see it from here, as I understand from here, that they are very shallow in the understanding of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
They go by, I think, excitement. Okay, we have some demonstrations, but they do not understand exactly what happens here.
Yeah.
I think it's not that it's my perception.
I think that there are some in the leadership of these demonstrations that understand full well what they're doing, and they're exploiting the fact that young people have a passion around treating people equally, and they're exploiting them. There's a phrase that was popular when they talked about the war on terror and misinformation, useful idiots. I hope I don't offend too many people, but sometimes I think these people are useful idiots because they haven't gone back and done their homework. And they're smart people. They're at great universities. But they should be doing their homework.
When I hear many times people that only at the time they first visited Israel, they really understood, went back to the States and changed their minds.
Yes.
Because you can't have it from media. The media is very, they want to make news that says attention to spectacles and money. And what sells is blood. But now I have to see that discrimination of our blood, that our people are slaughtered and kidnapped, is very well diminished. And then all these magnifying glass on the Gaza, which is a war, and we're all upset about a war. But I think, as we know, as we grew, the Israeli army has a lot of attention for try to be pinpointed,
yes,
punctual. It cannot be 100%. It's very, very far from 100%.
Yes.
But we fight for our lives.
Yes.
And these people, they try to destroy us. They put missiles on us for the last 30 years.
Yes.
I don't know how U.S. people would retaliate if there's some neighbor country shelling them or putting hundreds of missiles on them. I don't even want to have my imagination what happens behind the border.
Yes.
That's frustrating. But going back to Judaism, you told me about something that a Jewish mother asked her son when he went to school
Yes.
and came back And you've made something that made me very, very excited about.
Yeah, so there's a great story. There's a Nobel Prize winning physicist by the name of Isaac Isidore Rabi. Um, uh, I think some people have been introduced to his name because in the recent movie about the atomic bomb, about Oppenheimer, the movie Oppenheimer,
Yes.
Rabi is a notable character in that movie because he was a close friend of Oppenheimer. And there's a story about, and Isaac Isidore Rabi was a Nobel Prize winner. He won the prize for the discovery of what is nuclear magnetic resonance.
NMR.
NMR. It's a very it's an obscure technology at the time, but it went on to be this one of the core physical phenomena that was used to do MRIs today, and we all know what that has led to in
And he
benefits for
was the
medicine.
inventor. He discovered it.
Yeah, he didn't invent anything, but he discovered the phenomena and he integrated it into the understanding of quantum mechanics. And so, Robbie was asked a question, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember all the quotes from this. You have to excuse me, but the gist of it is this: someone asked him, "How did you become a scientist?" And he said that as a young child, his mother Jenny would when he came off the bus, she would ask him, say, Isaac, did you ask any good questions today? She didn't say, what smart thing did you say? What great answer did you give? But no, what question did you ask? So that she was really encouraging him to think broadly, to choose questions well, to ask good questions that
It's
reflect
rather than having all the solutions. Like engineers are always looking for solutions, and very few of them will go and ask the right questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Because this opens the
Yes,
mind.
it opens the mind, and I've always appreciated this. I've done a lot of systems engineering in my background. I was a director of systems engineering at an aerospace company, and I led R&D organizations. And whenever I work with my teams, a lot of my engineers, they want to go off and solve a problem, and what I really want to do is have an engagement with them beforehand, which is, what are the problems that we want to solve? Because the truth of the matter is we don't have the time to answer all the questions we have. And so the choice of asking good questions, and as an example of that, today you can go into the laboratory and do experiments. Experiments are time consuming and they're expensive. And so today we have large capabilities in computational methods, and we understand the physics, and we can explore the physics that we put into our models. That doesn't mean that we include all of the physics that would be in the real world, because that's very hard to do. Very often you don't know all the physics to put into your models.
So this is the reason to write a question.
Yes.
The answers are there.
Yes.
Just have the right question that the answer
Yes.
will be very promotive.
And very often computational modeling is a way to screen which are the right even it gives you an opportunity to clarify your questions so that when you get ready to spend all this money to go into the laboratory, you're asking even a better question.
That's also from the Talmud, because as we know, when a big rabbi came to one of the cities, shtetls in Europe, and he was expected, everybody were excited and was excited. And when he came there and finalized his speech, said, okay, who is going to contradict me? And no one. They respected him. Said, no, I'm not leaving here all night, if it takes, without some of you would ask me a question or contradict what I'm saying and give me a kind of a hifra misarba, try to convince me for the opposite. Otherwise, we are not sharpening ourselves, because I'm not the one that has all the answers. And I think if we go back to Judaism, and as we said about science and exploration, I think Judaism is a never-ending exploration of who we are.
Yes.
What is our message to the world? And all this question, why do they hate us so much? If we try to sharpen this question, I think the answer will be that we should be better people all the time. We should be also the best in what we are doing, because our mission is to enlighten the world. Maybe it's a kind of spiritual, but if you see from all angles and go back to the back of the history of more than 2,000, from 3,000 years, you'll find out that this Judaism is irritating the world for some reason. That causes us that we must do a work on ourselves to be better in everything, to be with a better soul, with a better approach to the world, with better science contribution for health and whatever we need. And this is proven. The world probably, hopefully, will be a bit delayed and understand that.
It could be. That's possible. I don't know. At the end of the day, I don't have a full understanding of the root reason of anti-Semitism that I've experienced as a child. Growing up, and even in some of my business dealings over the years, I've been exposed to some anti-Semitism. Not a lot, but enough that I remember it, and maybe I'm sensitized to it because I'm the child of Holocaust survivors. But at the end of the day, I don't fully understand what human need is manifested in anti-Semitism. In some ways, it's similar to some other forms of hate, but it's also unique. And there's a desire to, many societies want to exploit sort of the downtrodden in their societies. And often they provide anti-Semitism as a way for the lowest, for some of the lower classes of their society, the ones that they're trying to subjugate, if you will. They turn the direction, instead of towards the people that rule them, they turn their direction towards the Jews.
They use it.
And they use it as a weapon. Yeah. And in that sense, to some extent, in most societies, if the Jews aren't there and they're turning their direction towards some other, those people are always portrayed as being worthless or bad or incapable. Yeah. And in the case of in Judaism, it's often the opposite. It has some of those aspects, but then it has this other aspect, this conspiratorial aspect that we're actually. Instead of always being the stupid part of society, we're the conniving part of society, or we're manipulating the society, and we have outsized power. And the fact
all
of the
conspiracies are growing and growing.
All the conspiracies. So in most cases, racism is not a conspiracy theory. Yeah. But in anti-Semitism, there's a very big part of it that's an that aspect. And probably the person that I often admire when I'm thinking about how to explain anti-Semitism is an Israeli American that lives here in Yerushalayim. His name is Yossi Klein Halevi. He's an author, and he is a senior fellow at the Hartman Institute, and he does a wonderful job of explaining this much better than I can. And I direct everyone to the podcast where they can find Yossi talking about this. He's got some great, very great summaries of this.
So thank you. We are changing the podcast to a podcast.
Yes.
But I want to thank you so much for coming here to visit us and do this exploration, going after this Holocaust moments and the symbolic things, and to see that not much changed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And thank you for the time for this podcast. That is the result of our previous discussion this morning. And I wish you a safe journey home.
Thank you
and
so
Shabbat
much, Gil.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.